My name is Klaus Rostel, and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today is number 77, and today I'm going to talk about why volunteering is such great innovation practice. So to start with, I want to talk about saying no. Saying no is super popular these days. You'll read any amount of self-help articles that say you should learn to say no, and once I learned to say no, my life got better, and you should have razor thin focus, and then you should say no to everything else. No, 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 no. There's good reason for that. There's a lot of wisdom in there. You can find it online. It's easy. However, I want to strike a blow for saying yes as well. For saying yes, let me help. How can I help? To do that, I'm going to rewind time a few years, take you back to 1995. I joined the board of a nonprofit for the first time. This was my first nonprofit board position. I was 16 at the time. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't really know a lot about organizations as such. I knew that I'd been a member of one for a little while, and they had an available board position, said, Klaus, why don't you join? I said, okay, well, that's that. I'll join. And then later, there was like an annual meeting. I got voted in, blah, 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 blah. At age 19, I became the chairman of that organization. It wasn't big. It had about 200 members or so in Denmark and was a role-playing organization. It was one of the biggest of its kind in Denmark, if not actually the biggest at the time, but it wasn't exactly huge. When I was 24, we created the national organization, which is now called Bifrost. Then it was called like the National Organization of Live Action Role Playing in Denmark. And now it's called Bifrost, named after the mythological rainbow bridge from Nordic mythology. And it still exists. It now has thousands of members and budgets and people and events and employees and international presence, all sorts of nice stuff. Well, I helped create that back when I was 24. And until recently, I was the chairman of one of the largest youth culture organizations in Denmark, Rollespilsfabrikken, another role-playing organization. You get a theme. This is where I've spent a lot of my volunteer life. It is. I was the chairman of that until very, very recently. I helped found it in 2005. And for about 16 years, I was its chairman. No more. I've passed on that torch. But I've spent a lot of time in that organization, and of course still a member. So 25 years in volunteering, give or take. That's just in formal organizations. When you add to that, there's like help people do like university assignments, or help them win a electoral campaign, or just helped out with a bit of free coaching or a bit of layout, or done somebody a website. A ton of small stuff. Some of it small, some of it big. Now, there was a friend who said the following not too long ago. He said, Klaus, isn't there a horde of people who owe you a favor or two? And first I was like, well, I guess. I tried to downplay it. I tried to be humble about it. I tried to like say, then, yeah, there is. But, and there's a big but, because he'd noticed my tendency to volunteer my help, to always say, how can I help? But do you want sparring with that? Do you want some assistance with that? And the truth is, it's not just about altruism. Altruism pays part of it. The idea that I actually, because I'm such a lucky person, I'm born white, I'm born in a nice privileged country in Denmark, I'm male, I'm cisgender, I'm heterosexual, I'm able-bodied, I'm kind of decently able to use my both my mind and my social skills. I've got it pretty good, to put it mildly, and to say it a little bit more directly. I am so steeped in privilege just by being born where I was and how I was, that I've got to give something back. And I try. But it's more than that. And perhaps one of the reasons I've kept doing this so much for so many years is because it's not just altruism. Altruism will get you far, but it'll only get you so far, in my experience. Another part of it is that volunteering is damn awesome. Why is that? And why is that awesome from an innovation standpoint? Because this is an innovation keynote, right? So volunteering is great for many reasons. I'm just going to list a couple of them. We're not going to go into crazy detail. I'm not going to throw a lot of statistics at you, because that's not the talk you're here to hear. First off, volunteering is great because it gives you a sense of purpose. You're part of a group. You're kind of working for something bigger than yourself, whether it's a badminton club or saving the oceans or making Greece into a popular destination. There can be many things that you do, but you're part of something bigger than yourself. There's also a chance to make an impact, which is pretty cool because once you align with people who are volunteering their time, 5 people, 10 people, 1,000,000 people, there's a chance to make an impact that's bigger than you could have done on your own. There's also a lovely sense of community. When you do stuff with people, you bond. I have so many friends, so many dear, dear friends, so many strong relationships that have been formed in nonprofit communities by people volunteering and doing things together. As a friend of mine at one point said, and he's a researcher who looks at volunteering and kind of volunteer work, he said, well, if you only work with volunteers, then you need to have a good work environment. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Not everybody does, but you should. Because if you're not motivating them with pay, well, then you need to motivate them with something else. Fame or a chance to work on something greater than themselves or community or learning even. There's also a lot of that in nonprofits, that in volunteer work. You learn stuff. Just because you're not getting paid or just because you're not paying, you still learn stuff. You learn a ton of stuff. And it's fun. Doing something for the hell of it, doing something for free, doing something because you care about it, pro bono. It's fun. It's like, it brings smiles, makes you happy. Now, here are a few thoughts on volunteering from an innovation perspective, specifically. And since I had 5 reasons before, I'm going to give you 10 now. The first off is, it gives you access you otherwise wouldn't have. You get to work with people, with ideas, with equipment, with events, with plans, with anything that you normally wouldn't have access to if you said, I'm only doing this as paid work. Well, here you get to play around with the big speakers or the expensive model train or the huge event or whatever it is, because you're offering your time freely. There's a good chance you get access you otherwise wouldn't have. You get to take on responsibility. You get to say, I'll be in charge of marketing, or I'll be in charge of logistics, or let me handle the administration, or I'll take care of the operational side. You get to step up in a way that you never do in the kind of the more corporate world, the world of governmental organizations and companies and that sort of thing. Here you get to take on responsibility by saying, I'm up for doing it. Is anyone else? And you might just end up with a job. That's terrifying, but it's also insanely empowering. You get to train leadership. You get to show leadership, because anyone can say, I'm leading. Are you following? And if you're a part of a big organization, yes, it's different. You can't just waltz into the International Red Cross and say, I'm going to lead. Are you following? Because they won't. But you can create your own movement, your own nonprofit, your own group, your own network. And you can lead it if that's what you want. You can train your leadership. You can test your leadership. You can try it out. You'll be inspired because there's so many people out there. There's so many things. And anytime I walk into a new den of volunteerism, I learn new things. New things about culture, new things about process, new things about selling, new things about not selling, new things about humanity, to put it pretty grandly. There's so much inspiration out there. And because it's not shared for profit, it's shared for something else, then you get to kind of soak in that inspiration in a completely different way. You get to do experiments. You get to try out stuff. You get to say, what if we did this? And you get to fail. You get to fail so much. When you have a boss, sure, you may get to fail. Hopefully, if it's a good boss, if it's a good culture, that there's not one of these 0 failure tolerance places. But there's a limit to how much you get to fail. When you volunteer, the tolerance for failure is much higher. And I'm not talking about, I'm going to volunteer as a surgeon. You died. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you get to play around with things. You get to try out new things, and they get to fail, and the consequences are smaller. And that's why you get to do it, which is great. Training your failure muscle, super useful when you're working with innovation. You get to do moonshots. I mean, you get to say, let's shoot for the stars. Oh, failed? Too bad. It succeeded. Yes. You get to call the shots, even if they're to the moon. And you sometimes get access to training. If you go in and say, I'm a volunteer, I'd like to take this training, there are people who will help you just because you're not doing it for money. If I go out tomorrow and say, I'd like to learn a new skill because I want to earn money on it and I need it for my job, who wants to help? I'll get some people who will want to help, hopefully. But if I go out and say, I want to do something as a volunteer, but I lack this skill, whether it's website building or public speaking skills or knowing how a specific software as a service thing functions, or even learning about third wave feminism, then there are people who will train you who will say, yes, because your heart is pure, because your motives are not just crummy capitalist ones, I will help train you. There's so much out there. There's so much to learn, so much to be trained if you come in with that angle. And of course, you get to have experience. You get to try out these things. I have seen so many people come through our various organizations over the years and learn things and do things that they would never have been allowed to. And suddenly when they're out on the other side, suddenly they have experience. Suddenly you can say, oh, but I've led teams of 30 people in 1 year long co-creation processes. Sure, I've done conferences. Sure, I've kind of led team building events. Sure, I've been in charge of big budgets. Sure, I've taken care of this or that. You get to have actual experience. Even if you're not getting paid, you still get that experience and you can take that with you to other things you're doing. And that is super useful, especially from an innovation perspective, because you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from somewhere. And you get to have fun. You get to have a ton of fun, and fun it's not a necessary part of innovation, but it's really nice when it's there. It's really nice. These hard slogs, these things that go wrong, these criticisms and, oh no, it'll never work. It's a lot more fun when you have fun. Ooh, at least part of the time. So with that piece of advice, don't wait to be asked. Sure, some people will ask you, but don't wait around. Ask others how you can help. Sometimes they'll say yes. And if you do it enough, well, for every time you do it, you're going to grow. You're going to get better at something. You're going to get bigger as a human being. You're going to learn something. You're going to learn something about the world, about yourself, about the subject. You're going to grow. If you grow enough, if you do this enough, then they're going to start asking you. They're going to say, hey, can you help? They might even offer to pay you. That's a different story. That's a different topic. So we're not going to go down that road. I'm just saying it's something that might happen, but that's a topic for another time. For now, at the end, I'm just going to say this. Go out and volunteer. If you love innovation, if you work with innovation, if you just think innovation is necessary or needed, it's the same as necessary. I was going to say, like, interesting. And go out there and volunteer. You won't regret it. Thank you.